Janet Anderson's hands trembled as she reached for the tray of vials, the glass containers chattering against the stainless steel like nervous teeth. Dr. Brian E. Brown didn't even look up from his tablet, but his voice cut through the nurse's station with surgical precision. "Anderson, if you can't handle basic inventory without creating a symphony, perhaps you should reconsider your career choice." The tray slipped. 6 vials of saline solution scattered across the linoleum floor, and Janet dropped to her knees immediately, her blonde hair escaping its bun in limp strands. "I'm sorry, Dr. Brown. I'm so sorry. I'll clean this up right away." "Naturally." He stepped over her without breaking stride, his white coat billowing like a cape of superiority. Janet kept her head down, her posture curved into the familiar slouch that made her invisible. The other nurses had stopped noticing her apologies years ago. She was the ghost of Memorial Research Hospital's night shift, the woman who walked close to walls, who whispered, "Excuse me," to empty hallways, whose hazel eyes never quite met anyone's gaze. But as she swept the broken glass into a dustpan, her hands became unnaturally steady. The theatrical tremor that plagued her clipboard work vanished entirely. Each shard was collected with methodical precision, placed into the sharps container with movements that were almost mechanical in their efficiency. In the reflection of a darkened computer monitor, Janet's eyes caught the image of Dr. Brown disappearing down the corridor. For just a moment, her expression shifted, her jaw tightened, her gaze sharpened into something predatory, something ancient and dangerous. Then she blinked, and the timid nurse returned, apologizing softly to the floor tiles as she stood. Before we continue, welcome to Brittany Stories. This is the home of powerful, emotional, and unforgettable stories, filled with drama, secrets, unexpected twists, and life-changing moments. Each story is crafted to entertain, inspire, and keep you thinking long after the video ends. If you love shocking reveals, hidden identities, billionaire secrets, and stories that touch the heart, you're in the right place. Like our videos if they move you, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. The break room television flickered with the late-night news cycle, mostly ignored by the skeleton crew of Memorial Research's night shift. Janet sat in the corner booth, her lunch untouched, watching the screen with the glazed expression of someone too tired to sleep. Vanguard Biotech announced record profits today following their controversial acquisition of 3 private medical research facilities. The plastic fork in Janet's hand stopped halfway to her mouth. CEO Marcus Reinhardt stated that the company's proprietary trauma research programs would continue to push the boundaries of human endurance and recovery. Something dark and unreadable flickered behind Janet's hazel eyes. Her breathing remained steady, but her knuckles whitened around the fork until the plastic creaked. On screen, Reinhardt smiled from behind a podium decorated with the Vanguard logo, a DNA helix wrapped around a sword. Nurse Torres walked in, grabbed a coffee, and glanced at the TV. "That guy gives me the creeps. My cousin worked at one of those facilities Vanguard bought. Said they had a whole wing nobody was allowed to talk about." Janet's expression smoothed into practiced neutrality. "Really?" Her voice carried the same mousy quality it always did. "Yeah." "She quit after." Torres paused, noticing Janet's lunch. "You okay? You look pale." "Just tired." Janet manufactured a weak smile and stood, leaving her food behind. "Long shift." As she walked back to the nurse's station, her reflection in the hallway windows showed a woman whose posture had straightened, whose stride had become measured and deliberate. But by the time she rounded the corner into the fluorescent lights, the slouch had returned. Only her eyes remained sharp, watching, calculating. The night pressed against Memorial Research Hospital like a held breath. Janet moved through her rounds with the mechanical rhythm of someone who had done this 10,000 times before, checking 4 drips, recording vitals, adjusting pillows for patients who would never remember her face. At 2:47 a.m., she paused outside room 412. The sound was so faint that most people wouldn't have registered it at all, a low, metallic groan that seemed to rise from the building's bones. Janet's head tilted slightly, her body going perfectly still in a way that contradicted everything about her nervous persona. There it was again. Deeper this time. The sound of high-tensile steel under stress. Her eyes tracked to the floor, then to the elevator bank at the end of the hall. Memorial Research had 5 floors above ground. But it also had 3 floors below, accessible only by a service elevator that required 2 separate keycards and a biometric scan. Janet had been working here for 11 months. She'd never been given access to the basement levels. The tremor came again, followed by something that might have been a scream or might have been the shriek of metal tearing. Janet's hand moved to her pocket, fingers closing around a small object she always carried, a tactical pen with a tungsten tip. Nurse Castellanos emerged from the supply closet, yawning. "You hear that? Probably the heating system again. This place is falling apart." "Probably," Janet echoed, her voice soft and agreeable. But as Castellanos walked away, Janet moved to the nurse's station and pulled up the building schematic on the computer. Her fingers flew across the keyboard with practiced efficiency, navigating through directories most staff didn't know existed. Sublevel 3. High Security Medical Research. Patient Designation. Subject 0. Her jaw tightened. The screen went dark as footsteps approached, and Janet was back to fumbling with a patient chart when Dr. Brown appeared. The alarm started at 3:14 a.m. Not the familiar chirp of a call button or even the urgent beep of a code blue, but something Janet had never heard before, a deep, pulsing wail that seemed designed to trigger primal fear. Red emergency lights began strobing in the hallways, turning everything into a nightmarish strobe effect. Dr. Brown emerged from his office, his face slack with an expression Janet had never seen on him, terror. "Lockdown," he said, his voice cracking. "We need to." The east stairwell door exploded outward. The man who emerged was less human than force of nature. Blood streaked his face and bare chest, his gray hoodie hanging in tatters around massive shoulders. Fragments of what looked like industrial shackles still clung to his wrists, the broken chains dragging behind him like the ghost of his captivity. His eyes were wild, chemically dilated, seeing everything and nothing. Subject 0. Silas. "Oh God," someone whispered. Silas took one step into the corridor, his breathing ragged and animalistic. A nurse screamed. That single sound triggered the stampede. Dr. Brian E. Brown, the man who had spent 15 years cultivating an image of unshakable authority, shoved Nurse Castellanos directly into a medication cart. She hit the floor hard as Brown sprinted for the fire exit, his white coat flapping behind him. Others followed in a crushing wave of panic. Doctors, nurses, orderlies, all scrambling over each other in their desperation to escape. "Move!" someone shouted. "Get out of the way!" Within seconds, the corridor emptied, leaving only the wail of alarms, the flicker of emergency lights, and two figures standing in the hallway. Silas, breathing like a wounded bull, and Janet Anderson, who had not moved at all. The emergency lights painted the hallway in alternating darkness and blood-red illumination. In the silence after the stampede, Janet could hear everything: Silas's labored breathing, the distant wail of sirens, the hammer of her own heartbeat. Slowly, deliberately, she straightened her spine. The habitual slouch that had defined her for 11 months melted away like a discarded costume. Her shoulders rolled back, her chin lifted, and her breathing shifted into something deep and controlled, the measured rhythm of someone preparing for combat. Janet's hands, which had trembled at clipboards and medication trays for months, hung loose and ready at her sides. No shake. No hesitation. She studied Silas with clinical precision. The chemical cocktail in his system. She could see it in the dilation of his pupils, the rapid pulse visible at his carotid artery, the way his muscles twitched with overstimulation. Someone had pumped him full of combat stimulants, probably a modified adrenaline compound combined with pain suppressors. His right shoulder sat slightly higher than his left, rotator cuff damage, improperly healed. The blood on his chest was his own. She could see the fresh lacerations where monitoring equipment had been torn free. 300 pounds of trauma and rage, burning through sedatives faster than a normal metabolism could process them. And beneath all of it, she saw what the doctors had missed. This wasn't a monster. This was a prisoner who'd been pushed past his breaking point. Janet's expression shifted into something ancient and terrible, the face of a woman who had done things in dark places, who had calculated the exact pressure needed to collapse a trachea, who had once been called by a different name in rooms where mercy was considered a tactical weakness. Her voice, when she spoke, was barely a whisper. Not again. She would not let another experiment become a casualty of someone else's ambition. Silas's head swung toward her like a predator identifying prey. His chest heaved, muscles coiling beneath scarred skin. The broken shackles at his wrists caught the emergency lights, casting fractured shadows across the walls. For 3 seconds, neither moved. Janet watched his weight distribution, the micro-adjustments in his stance. Despite the drugs coursing through his system, despite the obvious pain, his body retained muscle memory. This man had been trained. Not just enhanced, but forged. The way he favored his left leg, the protective curl to his right hand, the slight forward lean that suggested grappling experience. Military. Special operations. And then something darker. Her analytical mind catalogued every detail. The chemical compound in his system would peak in approximately 4 minutes, then crash hard. His core temperature was elevated. She could see it in the flush of his skin, the steam rising from his bloodied torso in the climate-controlled air. Dehydration. Possible rhabdomyolysis if the muscle damage was extensive enough. He had maybe 15 minutes before his body started shutting down. Silas took a step forward, and the floor trembled. "You should run," he said, his voice scraped raw. I can't stop it." Janet didn't move. Didn't flinch. Her hazel eyes locked onto his with an intensity that seemed to cut through the chemical haze. "Yes, you can, Silas." His name on her lips made him pause. Confusion flickered across his face, a crack in the rage. "They told you that you couldn't," Janet continued, her voice carrying a weight of authority completely at odds with the timid nurse persona. "They programmed you to believe it. But you're still human under all that trauma. Still capable of choice. Another step." His fists clenched, blood dripping from reopened wounds. Janet's stance shifted almost imperceptibly, weight balanced, ready. "Don't make me put you down, soldier." The words hung in the air between them like a command from a forgotten life. Silas froze mid-stride, his entire body going rigid. Something in Janet's tone, the absolute certainty, the complete absence of fear, triggered a response deeper than the chemicals flooding his system. "You don't understand," Silas growled, but his voice carried less conviction now. "They made me into. I've killed people. So many. I know exactly what you are." Janet's voice cut through his self-loathing with surgical precision. "I know because I've been where you are. Different handlers, same cage." His eyes narrowed, trying to focus through the drug-induced haze. "You're just a nurse." "No." The word was absolute. "I'm the person they send when nurses can't fix the problem. Or at least, I was." Behind them, somewhere in the building, voices shouted. Security protocols engaging. The erasure team would be here in minutes, the cleanup crew that made inconvenient truths disappear. Janet took a single step forward. "You have a choice right now, Silas. You can let the rage take you, kill me, kill whoever else is still hiding in these halls. Become the monster they told you that you were. Or," her hand moved slowly to her pocket, extracting a syringe preloaded with a clear liquid, "you can let me help you, and we both walk away from this." "They'll kill you for helping me." "They'll try." The ghost of a smile touched Janet's lips. "They've been trying for 3 years." Silas looked at the syringe, then at her face. Recognition dawned slowly, not of her features, but of what she represented. A kindred spirit. Another weapon who'd slipped the leash. "What's in it?" "Compound sedative. Designed for enhanced metabolisms. It'll hurt like hell, but you'll wake up. And then you run. Same as me." His massive frame swayed slightly, the combat stimulants beginning their inevitable crash. Silas charged. Despite their conversation, despite the moment of connection, the chemicals in his system overrode conscious thought. 300 pounds of enhanced muscle mass launched forward with terrifying speed, his roar echoing off the corridor walls. Janet moved like water. She angled her body 45 degrees, letting his momentum carry him past her initial position. As his massive arm swung toward her head, she dropped beneath it, her hand locking onto his damaged rotator cuff with precisely calculated pressure. Not enough to stop him, but enough to redirect. Silas's own force worked against him. Janet pivoted at the hip, using a modified judo throw that turned his charge into a controlled fall. The physics were impossible, a woman barely half his size managing his mass, but technique and leverage cared nothing for weight classes. He hit the floor hard but rolled with practiced instinct. Janet was already moving, closing the distance before he could fully recover. Her left hand caught the chain fragment still dangling from his wrist, using it to control his arm. Her right hand, holding the syringe, moved with the precision of someone who'd done this in darker places, under worse conditions. Silas twisted, trying to throw her off, but she was already inside his guard. Her knee found his solar plexus, not a strike, but a pressure point that made his breath catch. In that half-second of distraction, Janet's thumb found the carotid artery at his neck. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and drove the needle home. The compound hit his system like ice water. Silas's eyes went wide, his body convulsing once before the sedative took hold. Janet held him steady as he collapsed, guiding his fall so his head wouldn't strike the floor. Within seconds, his breathing steadied into unconsciousness. Janet had 90 seconds. She knew the timeline by heart, had lived variations of it a dozen times before. The moment Silas's biometrics flatlined on their monitors, the erasure team would deploy. They'd already be in the building, waiting in unmarked vehicles, carrying suppressed weapons and falsified credentials. Her hands moved with mechanical efficiency. She checked Silas's pulse, steady, strong, then positioned him in recovery position. From her pocket, she pulled a small notepad and scribbled 4 words, "North exit. Midnight. Run." She tucked it into what remained of his hoodie pocket. The sound of boots echoed from the stairwell. Professional. Synchronized. Not hospital security. Janet stripped off her scrubs, revealing the plain clothes she always wore beneath. Dark jeans, fitted black shirt, running shoes instead of the foam clogs she pretended to wear. Her hands went to her hair, yanking out the bun and the theatrical loose strands, revealing a much shorter cut she'd kept pinned up for months. The tactical team burst through the stairwell door as Janet disappeared into the supply closet. Through the crack, she watched them move. 6 operators in unmarked tactical gear, scanning the hallway with carbines equipped with suppressors. "Subject neutralized," the team leader reported into his radio. "Scanning for the asset." Janet's access badge lay on the floor beside Silas, right where she'd dropped it. Janet Anderson's badge. Janet Anderson's identity. By the time they found the supply closet, she was already 3 floors down, moving through maintenance corridors that didn't appear on official schematics. By the time they locked down the perimeter, she was in a vehicle she'd kept prepared for exactly this scenario. By the time the sun rose, Janet Anderson had ceased to exist. 600 miles north, a woman with brown hair pulled into a tight bun stepped through the employee entrance of Sacred Heart Medical Center. Her name tag read, Sarah Mitchell, RN, and she carried the same beaten lunch bag, wore the same cheap scrubs, and displayed the same nervous smile that Janet Anderson had perfected. The night shift supervisor barely glanced up from her paperwork. "First day." "Yes, ma'am." Sarah's voice carried a soft southern accent that Janet Anderson had never possessed. "I'm a little nervous." "You'll do fine. Just stay out of Dr. Reeves's way when he's in one of his moods." "Of course." Sarah smiled gratefully and shuffled toward the nurse's station with a posture that suggested a lifetime of apologizing. But as she passed the break room, the television caught her attention. A news report from Memorial Research Hospital. Mysterious incident at the research facility has left staff shaken. Officials maintain that it was a routine medical emergency, though all employees have been required to sign non-disclosure agreements. The screen cut to footage of Dr. Brian E. Brown, looking haggard, refusing to comment. Sarah's hands, reaching for her time card, didn't tremble at all. Then the report shifted. In related news, billionaire tech mogul Marcus Reinhardt of Vanguard Biotech announced increased investment in trauma research facilities, stating that recent breakthroughs in human enhancement protocols would revolutionize. Sarah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Somewhere in an underground facility, a giant man named Silas would wake up with a pounding headache and a note telling him to run. He would find money in his locker, civilian clothes, and a fake ID. He would wonder who the timid nurse really was. And somewhere in a glass tower, Marcus Reinhardt would receive a report about an asset who'd survived impossible odds, eliminated by a ghost that left no forensic trace except a single message embedded in the hospital's deleted security footage, a frame of code that simply read, "I'm still here." Sarah Mitchell clocked in for her shift, apologized to a supply cart she'd bumped, and disappeared into the rhythm of hospital work. The world would never know who saved the giant. But the giant would remember. And so would the monsters who'd created him. And there you have it, the story of a nurse who was never really a nurse at all, and a giant who discovered that even in his darkest moment, someone saw him as human. Janet Anderson became Sarah Mitchell, but how many other identities has she worn? How many other, invisible people around us are hiding extraordinary pasts behind ordinary faces? And most importantly, will Marcus Reinhardt and Vanguard Biotech come looking for her now that they know she's alive? As for Silas, did he take Janet's advice and run? Or did he choose a different path? Perhaps one that leads him back to confront the people who turned him into Subject Zero. I want to hear from you. Do you think Janet made the right choice by revealing herself to save Silas, or should she have stayed hidden? What do you think Silas will do next? Disappear into a new life, or seek revenge against Vanguard Biotech? Should Janet and Silas's paths cross again, and if so, as allies or enemies? What other secrets do you think are hidden in Memorial Research Hospital's basement levels? Drop your theories and answers in the comments below. I read every single one and I love hearing your thoughts. If you enjoyed this story of hidden identities, unlikely heroes, and the question of whether monsters are born or made, please hit that like button. It helps more people discover these stories. And if you want more thrilling tales of ordinary people with extraordinary secrets, subscribe to Brittany's Stories and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone overlooks. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep your eyes open. You never know who might be hiding in plain sight.